If you spent any time online during the last presidential election, you probably heard one phrase over and over again: Hunter Biden's laptop. For some Americans, it became proof that the Biden family was running one of the biggest corruption scandals in modern political history. For others, it was dismissed as election misinformation. But here's the question I wanted answered. What did the laptop actually prove? Not what politicians claimed or what social media argued, because there's a lot of that. What did years of investigations actually uncover? And that's where our story continues. This is part 2 of my investigative episode about Hunter Biden and Burisma, the Ukrainian energy company. If you haven't seen part 1, check it out on my YouTube channel. It's out now. I am Darisse Smith, an independent journalist. This is the Journalism of Everything. In October of 2020, just weeks before Election Day, the New York Post published emails and documents that were said to come from Hunter Biden's abandoned laptop. The timing alone guaranteed controversy. The files included emails, text messages, photographs, financial records, and deeply personal details about Hunter Biden's life. At first, many journalists treated the material cautiously. The New York Post is known for sensational headlines, not always with substance. There were legitimate questions about where the laptop came from, who handled it, whether any files had been altered, and whether foreign actors could have inserted misinformation. And those questions mattered. But over time, several major news organizations authenticated significant portions of the material. So the conversation shifted. It was no longer, was this Hunter Biden's laptop? It became, what does it actually show? And this is where the political arguments begin to separate. Because there are actually 3 different stories people tell about Burisma. And they often get blended together, but they're not the same. First, there's the ethical question. Second, there is the influence-peddling question. Third, there is the criminal bribery allegation. And those are 3 very different claims, and they require 3 very different levels of evidence. Republicans finally gained something that they had been waiting for: control of the House of Representatives. That meant subpoena power, bank records, witnesses, corporate documents, financial transfers. If evidence existed that Joe Biden had accepted money from Burisma, this investigation had the best chance of finding it. Investigators uncovered something important. Hunter Biden had earned millions from foreign business relationships. His business associates frequently emphasize the Biden family name. The Biden name clearly had value. Investigators also found that Joe Biden had more contact with some of Hunter's business associates than earlier public statements had suggested. And those findings raised legitimate ethical questions, but they did not answer the central question. Did Joe Biden change American foreign policy because of Burisma? Years of investigation did not establish that. And I know that my MAGA listeners might disagree with me here, but there just wasn't enough evidence to support this. And this was a Republican-controlled Senate investigation. Similarly, as much as I think President Trump is making decisions as president only to enrich himself and not the country, there is only a correlation and not direct evidence yet. It looks fishy, but nothing has been definitively proven. Even before the House investigation, Republican-led Senate committees had reached a similar conclusion. Their report criticized Hunter Biden's role on Burisma's board. They described it as awkward, problematic, and a source of concern for American officials. And that distinction matters. And I agree, fishy. Republicans themselves documented an appearance of conflict, but they stopped short of proving that Joe Biden fired Ukraine's prosecutor to protect Hunter. Then came what looked like the biggest breakthrough of all. An FBI confidential informant named Alexander Smirnov claimed Burisma executives had paid $5 million to Hunter Biden and another $5 million to Vice President Joe Biden. If true, that would have fundamentally changed the entire Burisma story. But then the story collapsed. Special counsel David Weiss charged Smirnov with lying to the FBI. Prosecutors alleged the bribery story had been fabricated. Smirnov later pled guilty. This moment illustrates something important. Real ethical concerns existed, but some of the most explosive allegations simply did not survive scrutiny. Another point often gets lost in political debate. Hunter Biden was convicted, but not for Burisma. He was prosecuted in 2 federal cases. One involved lying on a federal firearm purchase form. The other involved tax crimes. And those were serious criminal cases. But neither one accused him of taking Burisma money illegally, or bribing government officials, or selling American foreign policy. Those are separate issues. It's important not to combine them into one narrative simply because they involve the same person. There is no doubt that Hunter Biden is, at a minimum, ethically compromised. He has had drug addiction issues, and I established in the first episode that he capitalized on his father's name. But no connection can be definitively made that Vice President Biden has changed U.S. foreign policy to benefit his son. Then came another controversy. President Joe Biden pardoned his son. That decision created an entirely new accountability debate. Critics argued that the pardon contradicted Biden's earlier promise not to intervene. No doubt. Supporters argued that Hunter Biden had become a uniquely political target. He was in President-elect Donald Trump's sights for sure. Regardless of where you fall, the pardon belongs to a different discussion. It does not answer what happened with Burisma years earlier. So what do we actually know? After years of investigations, congressional hearings, subpoenas, financial records, and criminal prosecutions, what can we actually say? I think there are 3 answers. First, Hunter Biden accepted a lucrative board position while his father was vice president and deeply involved in Ukraine policy. That created an obvious appearance of conflict. Second, there is meaningful evidence that Hunter Biden's business partners valued the Biden family name and sought access because of it. And that is a legitimate ethical concern. Third, the strongest allegation that Joe Biden personally accepted Burisma money or changed U.S. policy in exchange for it. This has not been proven after years of investigation. Those conclusions are probably not going to satisfy everyone, but they reflect where the publicly available evidence stands today. This is where, if you want to get to the bottom of this, you have to set aside your confirmation bias wherever you stand on it. The evidence does not show that Joe Biden personally benefited or changed U.S. foreign policy to benefit his son. To me, the Burisma story isn't really about one family, the Biden family. It's about a weakness in American democracy. Should the relatives of powerful elected officials be allowed to earn millions from foreign companies seeking influence? And that is a fair question because it goes on all the time. And it doesn't stop with the Bidens. It applies to Republicans. It applies to Democrats. It applies to the Trump family, to the Kushner family, to the Biden family, and every future administration. Because once political influence becomes something that can be bought, public trust disappears. We may never know every private conversation that happened behind closed doors, but as journalists and as citizens, our responsibility is to separate evidence from allegation, ethics from criminality, and certainly from speculation. And that is not always satisfying, but it's how accountability works. I'm Darisse Smith. I'm an independent journalist. This is the journalism of everything. If you enjoyed this episode and found it interesting, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to this channel, get my name out there. I'm a one-woman show. I do all of the research, episode creation, the script writing, the recording, the editing, all by myself. So please subscribe if you enjoyed this. I'm on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other podcast apps. Thanks so much for listening.